This podcast is brought to you by Data Media, email deliverability and email marketing consulting services.
How many times have I seen on discussion boards people say, who do you like? And everybody chimes in and says, I use this vendor, I like that vendor, I heard this vendor. And when you go that route, the danger is you're going to pick the vendor that was perfect for your friend's company and not your company. So brands are bombarded by all of this information that paints an incomplete picture of the landscape from their perspective in terms of what they need.
Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of emailgeeks.show, the podcast where once a month the leading email experts share their knowledge about email marketing, email deliverability, and marketing. My guest today is Chris Marriot, the founder of Email Connect. They specialized in assisting top brands in connecting with their ideal ESPs and CDPs. My name is Sela Yofe, and I'm an email deliverability consultant. I'm working with global email senders, startups, and email service providers on improving their email deliverability, email authentication, and strategy. And I'm the host of this podcast. Good morning, Chris. It's great to have you on my podcast.
Good morning. It's great to be here. I'm always happy to help out other big email marketing folks, and you're one of those folks, so I'm happy to help.
Appreciate that. It seems that anyone in the email space fell into email. So I wanted to ask, how did you get into email?
You stole my thunder, because I was going to say the exact same thing. I think for those of us of a certain generation, email marketing didn't even exist when we were starting our careers. So it wasn't something we grew up dreaming of being. I want to be an email marketer or a fireman. I'll have to wait and see how that turns out. Most of us. So I got into email marketing really via the digital marketing route, in that when I started in traditional advertising, like the guys in that Mad Men series. Not that far. I'm not that old, but doing TV commercials, and which I thought was great. And then the digital world exploded in the 90s in the US, in the mid 90s, and I thought this was the future, and I needed to see what was going on. And so I joined a very early stage digital agency, because email wasn't even a thing for the first 5 years of digital marketing. So you had I joined a company that built websites and did, we called them back in the day banner ads. And all of that got a little bit boring over time, because the technology was not yet there to do sophisticated things in display advertising. And once you did a website, you were kind of done. They were project oriented. And I landed at another company that was doing something that I thought was very, very interesting, that I later found out was email marketing. The whole time I was there, I didn't know it was email marketing. They called it dynamic marketing engine or something or other. And unfortunately, they never realized they were doing email marketing either, because I think they would have been much more successful. They were trying to build these ecosystems of landing pages and emails. And I had been working with their more traditional clients doing websites. So anyway, finally, in the early first part of this century, that sounds back in the first decade, I got approached by a headhunter who said there's this email agency. Again, I did not yet figure out that I was actually working at one already. This email agency is looking for somebody who can run their agency services. And in the early days, every ESP often had people that provided services, because the platforms were not self-service. They were full service. Nobody knew how to do the creative. Nobody knew how to do the strategy. So ESPs in the US said, we need to wrap services around. And they went looking for advertising folks or agency guys. So looked like a great opportunity. I joined the company, and it was called Digital Impact. That was 5 months later bought by Axiom. So that's, I sort of blundered into email marketing just like everyone else. But once I got there, I loved it. And it was I ended up running Axiom's global agency services for several years, and it was great. I loved it, and so I'm glad I stumbled, fumbled, and blundered into it, like so many of my peers.
Uh-huh. Can you tell us more about Email Connect?
The concept of helping brands through the RFP process, I actually started in 2012 when I joined David Daniels at the Relevancy Group, which is a boutique consultancy that up until that point focused on helping vendors in lead gen and strategy and advice. And he was very well known to be the vendor guy who knew the vendors inside and out. And I thought, if I'm going to start this idea of advising brands, it would be good to have a partner who knew the vendor landscape inside and out much better than me. So we started that. It was very, very successful. And around 2015, though, we began to realize that there were certain vendors who thought we were pay to play. In other words, if they gave us a contract for advisory services, they should win our RFPs. There was one vendor in particular that felt that way, and they never won our RFPs, and they didn't listen to us why they didn't, and they didn't pay attention to the fact that we said we don't make the decision, our clients do. But nevertheless, some vendors began to question whether they wanted to keep doing business with us, and David and I saw the only way out of that was to split the company. And so Email Connect actually was launched in December of 2015. And what we did was David kept his traditional business, the vendor side, the sell side advisory, and I took the RFP, which was the buy side. And I took that and the tremendous knowledge that I'd learned with David in working with him for 4 years on the vendor landscape. And so I felt very comfortable at that point that I had a handle on the vendor landscape. We'd been doing buyer's guides for 2 or 3 years, deep diving into the vendors. So I felt at that time confident enough that I could do it without having David as a partner. So we split the company and both continued on their merry way.
The site Chief Martech, who started following marketing technology back in 2011, started with around 150 platforms. These days, there are more than 11,000 platforms. So it becomes harder and harder to choose the right platform. Also, I've seen a survey stating that the most replaceable platforms are email platforms. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it is. And there was a survey recently released by a UK company that said that CMOs are more confused about technology, MarTech, than ever. And it's not surprising. There's a lot of reasons for that. But let's go back to the number of MarTech companies and the explosion of that. You're right. But we deal with, our clients are predominantly enterprise emailers and high mid-market emailers. And there isn't their options of platforms to use are limited to probably there's probably 20 platforms. And so we don't really have to follow 10,000 platforms. And we manage 30 to 50 billion emails. Actually, it's going up, about 50 billion emails out to bid a year. And we don't have our go-to list of ESPs. 10 years ago, we kind of did. When David and I started the business, the options were less, even at the enterprise ESP space. They've probably doubled since then. Yeah. And so I don't have a go-to list. I sit there, work through with the client's requirements and use cases, and then I match that segment of platforms that I think best fit their needs. So in the course of 1 year, beyond just getting the briefings that they give us, because all the vendors want to be in our RFPs, I see them in action in an RFP, filling out requirements documents. If they make it to the final 4, doing use cases. So we have a really, really good look annually at all of the leading platforms, at least once, and much more than what Forrester sees in a wave. Again, we're seeing them in action, pitching a client and responding to a particular client's needs. Now, if you move down market, to your point, SMB, and we don't work in SMB, we don't even work in lower mid, because you're right, they don't do RFPs, and even if they did, they would not pay what we charge, and I don't blame them. So, that's the area where the explosion has really happened, and you're right. I could list maybe I call them cheap and cheerful platforms down at that level. And how do you define a cheap and cheerful platform? There's very, very simple definition. It's an ESP that has its pricing on the website. Now, I'm not making a value judgment against there's cheap and cheerful platforms. That's not a derogatory. It's meant to imply they're low cost and very easy to use. And so to try to even compare them to one another gets really tough. It's almost back to the days, in 2006, 2007, you won an enterprise RFP. 90% of that was your price, your CPM. And over the course of the next 5, 6, 7 years, pricing became less of a driver of the decision, and features and functionalities that were exploding on the leading platforms became much more of a decision, but it made the decision process much more complicated for brands. Instead of just saying, well, who's cheapest? Now they had to start understanding, well, who's right for us? And that's a much harder decision to come to. And that's where I saw the opportunity and why I started doing this business for Relevancy Group, is that brands needed guidance to make their own selection. And that's all, with the explosion of platforms, again, that's all, today it's just as important. But going back to sort of SMB, a lot of good platforms out there. Deciding between them, in my mind, oftentimes, if I were advising an SMB as a nice guy, I'd say look at price and look at who they have built-in integrations with. Because SMB, do they have any e-commerce integrations? Do they have any? Those are things that make one of those platforms better than another. Does it come? Does it come with a ready-made, components that all you need if you're a small e-commerce shop to run your business and do email marketing and maybe do your e-commerce site? So those types of things, I think, differentiate at the SMB level and don't really require an RFP, as you said.
And after RFP and choosing the right email platform, you need to do a migration. Can you tell us more on ESP migration?
Migrations are longer and more complex than ever. And in fact, that's why we've started doing some work with partnering with Ryan Phelan of RPE Origin, because they specialize in migrations, and which an RFP is inevitably followed by a migration. And so kind of funny how those two things fit together. So you're absolutely right. You don't want to you don't want to be switching. The old thing was, every 3 to 5 years, take a look around. You don't want to do that. But a couple of things. One, I meant to say this earlier, because I see marketing automation and ESP as one and the same. So let me start with the definition of the modern ESP. Okay. And this is the one that this is what buyers think about, because buyers use ESP. And when they say, I need a new ESP, what they're saying is it should have built-in marketing automation, the typical promotional campaigns, which ESPs did. It should be on the channel and be able to send out in any channel. And that's when they say, so all of these distinctions and definitions and it should be able to do orchestration. So it gets confusing when all of these analysts say, here's our orchestration wave, here's our cross-channel marketing platform wave, here's our ESP wave, here's our marketing automation wave. Brands aren't dumb. They look at those and they say, it's kind of the same companies and platforms in every one of these. And guess what? They're right. It is. And that's because, again, that's what a modern ESP is. Now, none of them call themselves ESPs. You look at, if you look at all these enterprise platforms, they run from the label ESP, which I don't understand. There's no stigma attached to that. Again, brands, they know what they need. And when I talk to them about an RFP and they say we're looking for new ESP, I don't say, well, do you want marketing automation with that? Do you want multi-channel with that? I know exactly what they're talking about. They're saying they want all of that. And so it's and it doesn't surprise me that marketing automation and email platforms top that list, because there are some very aging platforms out there that brands have been on for 10 years. I'm not going to badmouth anybody, but that brands have been on for 10 years or 8 years, where innovation kind of stopped a long time ago, and investment kind of stopped a long time ago. I mean, most of the brands looking are coming from 5 platforms, and it doesn't surprise me that those folks on those platforms are looking. And that's what's driving a lot of this. It isn't, oh, I made a bad decision 2 years ago. It's, I made a great decision 10 years ago, but 10 years later, I kind of needed to, like you said, it's time to get a new car. We're working with clients today, and when I look at that are on some of these platforms that haven't really done much for 10 years, and I look at all of the third-party vendors they're bringing in to help them make up the deficiency of that platform, and I say, you're going to be really happy when this is done for lots of reasons. One of them is, though, you're going to be able to consolidate a lot of the stuff that you've been giving to third parties who are good at what they do, but there are platforms that can do that in the platform. So we can take 3 or 4 vendors that are currently helping you get all this out and move it down potentially to one new platform and 1 or 2 new platforms. So it really is driven again by the fact that there is just some platforms that people need to be moving off of, and they are.
Yeah.
And I know you'd love me to say who, but I'm not going to. I mean, OI calls, I did.
What's happened in the OI call stays in the OI call, or something like
exactly,
that.
Exactly.
Like
that's where Sal and I know each other from. That's exactly right. You got to join OI. You got to join Only Influencers, and then you have to join the weekly Zoom call, and then you can hear what Sal and I really think. That's when the gloves are off. But no.
Can you tell us how finding a new email platform looks like from the organization standpoint?
There's 3 ways brands sort of say, oh, I need to do an RFP. Who should I look at? One is they look at the analyst reports, which, as I was saying earlier, Force will say, here's the only 13 ESPs you need to look at. Well, that's preposterous that there's only 13 you need to think about. And not only that, but the ESPs that are in their typical wave report are not ESPs that I would see as competitive with one another, because they're either bit different size. They go from everywhere from, enterprise, marketing cloud down to some, almost like a CDP type ESP. And so they don't, but brands often go and say, let's take the top 6 of an analyst report. Well, that's not a good way to go. To your point, vendors will tell them, it's hard to tell for them to understand the difference between vendors, because vendors can apparently do everything according to their salespeople. And so that's another source of bad information. And lastly is their peers. How many times have I seen on discussion boards, people say, who do you like? And everybody chimes in and says, I use this vendor. I like that vendor. I heard this vendor. And when you go that route, the danger is you're going to pick the vendor that was perfect for your friend's company and not your company. So brands are bombarded by all of this information that paints an incomplete picture of the landscape from their perspective in terms of what they need. And that's why I think bringing in an advisor is helpful, because I've seen it time and time again. The number one cause of an RFP to blow up or produce a bad result is when a brand invites the wrong vendor mix to look at. Because if you think about that, let's say you're looking at 8 vendors and you're doing your brand, you're doing it by yourself, and you pick 4 that were really good picks. And then you pick 4 that aren't good fits. You now have a 50% chance that you're going to make a bad decision. And I always tell brands, The
Yeah.
most important thing to get right is who you look at, because it ensures that they're at least going to be a fit. And who wants to waste their time evaluating? I don't evaluating vendors that can't win your business. I was talking to a client last week, and I said I was going through the criteria, big RFP. I was going through the
Mhm.
criteria and saying, here's what they had, their hurdles they had to clear to get included. And I said, but one of the most important hurdles, and it wasn't written down, but I said one of the most important hurdles is that I think they have a chance of making the final four, cutting down from 8 or 10. If I don't think a vendor can even make the final four,
Mhm.
why am I wasting my time with looking at them? Why am I asking my brands to look at them? So, we take it very seriously. And I said earlier, we don't tell clients who to pick. We don't. We do strongly advise them on who to look at, because we think, again, that's our job. We come in, we know the landscape. One of the reasons they hire us, not the only reason,
Mhm.
but one of the reasons they hire us is to make sure that they're looking at the right vendors. And I'm very proud of our track record of winning vendors not having been on the radar screen of our clients before they hired us, meaning they would not have ended up with the vendor they did if they'd done it themselves, because they either hadn't heard of that vendor or they hadn't considered that vendor until we advised them to look at it. And so, and it's not, this is in no way, shape, or form meant to be a criticism of brands. Why should they know what's going on in the vendor landscape? That's not their job. And it's with, as you and I said at the upfront, with the explosion of new providers and all of the changes in the marketplace,
Mhm.
it's if it's not your job to
Yeah.
pay attention to the vendor landscape, you can't possibly do it, because it's just, there's too many moving parts, and there's too many flavors of the week ESPs, and there's too many misleading analyst reports, all of which, and there's too many salespeople, like you said, that say, yes, our platform can do that. Yes, our platform can do that. Yes, our platform can do that.
Yeah.
That it makes it really hard for brands to understand what are, in fact, there are tremendous differences between these vendor platforms that are meaningful in a way that impacts a brand's business for better or for worse. And again, that most brands don't have that knowledge going in, and that's that's what advisors like me are for, to provide that knowledge of matching their requirements to the right vendors.
Your focus is working with large-scale organizations. Could you provide some advice for SMBs when selecting an email platform?
Well, again, if we're talking about SMB, the first problem is there's probably 200 platforms that you could consider.
200.
But they're the yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to name them all. But
Yeah.
there are probably only 10 or so that are, when I say big enough, have enough clients that they are in good financial shape. They're not going anywhere. That you potentially want to consider.
Mhm.
But I think it comes down to something I said earlier, which is, compare their pricing, because it's on their because you can, because it's on their websites.
Yeah.
And the pricing's not that much. They all offer free, and then you get something. But I would also look at, and they also give you demo. Sometimes they'll let you do it. Have a demo,
A free trial.
trial.
Mhm.
Yeah. But also look at who their integration partners are, and which are important to you. And they always have that. They'll have a page on their website. So if you're in e-commerce, who do they support? Are they integrated with Shopify? Are they integrated with someone else? But whatever there is, there are third parties that may be important to your business, even
Yeah.
if it's a small business. And seeing, again, if those integrations are out of the box, are going to make a big difference. And that might be the biggest difference when you're looking at these platforms. They're all, as I said, they're all easy to use, and don't require a whole lot of training. Some of them are better at responding to questions. While they're not providing services, some of them are better at responding to questions or help with the platform. But an enterprise platform selecting the wrong ESP is going to be disastrous on their business. It's going to hurt the bottom line. An SMB making a wrong decision on a platform, switch. It'll take
Yeah.
24 hours to switch to another one. It's not going to, the impact, because what makes a decision wrong at that level, I'm not even sure what the wrong choice would look like, because it's just the platforms are similar and you're not asking them to do very much. Yeah, and now we're not talking about S&B anymore. We're talking mid-market enterprise. Brands should think of, first of all, go into a migration saying, I'm going to correct everything dumb I did when I set up on this platform. Because there's things I did that I've been paying the price for 10 years. So identify those. And again, that's where bringing in a trusted advisor may help. And there are things you have a chance, not just to get the right platform, but get your data structure right, to clean up your automations, because you're always going to discover automations you need to remember that may or may not still be running. And I mean, you're going to uncover so much in that migration. And that's why you want to take enough time to rethink potentially how you do things and processes that can speed things up. You might have had a platform, just a dumb example. You might have had a platform that didn't have a WYSIWYG nice email editor, and you were still cutting up and putting the email together, which is very time consuming and very painful. And now you've got a new platform that's got WYSIWYG and can store content blocks. All right, well, rethink how you're going to create your emails as you're moving over. And maybe you're going to blow up the whole thing where you just create one email and cut it up. But now you create dynamic content blocks that will, improve your ability to personalize, dynamic. It'll speed the market. Those are, that's just one of the things that I think can you need to use a migration. If you've lived in a house for 20 years and you move, in the process of that move, there's like, oh my God, I have a lot of junk that I've been working around for 10 years that I don't need. And if you're smart, you throw it all out. And the same thing is, again, with email migration, there's going to be a lot of processes and junk that you're going to say, I can't believe I've been living with this for 10 years. I'm getting rid of it and I'm going to start fresh. And now you've got a new platform. You've got a new, better data schema. You've got better data flows. You've combined journeys so from 100 down to a number that makes more sense, that incorporates journey branching. And so your whole program is going to be better as a result. You're not just going to have a better platform, but the way you do things is going to be, ideally, will be much improved. And that wasn't something in the day of lift and shift was possible. Back to 15 years ago, even at the enterprise level, you'd pick up, you'd lift, you'd shift, in 4 weeks, you'd be running again. But we didn't have hundreds of automations. In fact, in those days, we pretty much had none. And now we have all these automations that need to be moved. So,
it's like moving while you're on production, because automations are always on. You need to move. You also need to calculate your gap pricing, because you're probably going to use 2 platforms at the same time while migrating.
Certain brands, that's a must. You're exactly right. And which just means it's never too early for you to start an RFP. As starting an RFP, even a year in advance, if you're a big enterprise sender, almost ensures, to your point, that you're going to be running 2 platforms. You're going to be extending the contract of the guys you just fired. And so, building in the account of migration and the RFP, starting 2 years in advance,
2 years,
or 18 months in advance, 18 months. Well, there are, we just finished a client where the migration is probably going to take 2 years. And given the complexity, the number of vendors they're on, that they're moving and consolidating, but they knew that and they expected that and they built that in. They were smart. But if you think about, if you haven't done an RFP or a migration in 10 years, I don't expect you to know how long it's going to take, but if you're listening to this podcast, it is going to take way longer than you think. Way longer. And to your point, even if you started at the right time, you're right. You're going to be ramping up on one vendor, at least paying the migration on one vendor while you're still sending from the other. You cannot get around that. You cannot shut down a vendor and then do the migration. But what you can prevent is trying to renegotiate a contract with your existing vendor that you just fired, because that's not going to be an easy, pleasant conversation for anybody. I advise brands, think about brands that have like 4 or 5 separate sub-brands. And in the past, it would have been say, oh, we're just lift and shift it. Again, going back 15 years. Now the better way to think about it, because that scares brands. And it's like, you don't have to do a big bang migration. You got 4 sub-brands? All right, let's migrate the smallest one first. How'd that go? Great. Next smallest one second. Next smallest one third. Next smallest one fourth. And if you've done everything right, you're ramping up your sending over the course of, say, 12 months. And the last contract you have with your existing one, has lower volumes baked into it than you traditionally were running. So you're not spending double. And again, these are intricacies that outside advisors can help you think through, because again, we do this every day, many times a year. And of course we know what are the smartest things to do when, because we're doing it all the time. And so again, that's where a trusted advisor will pay for himself or herself many, many, many times over. And we haven't talked about pricing negotiation, but I'll throw that in here.
Sure.
Which is when I'm managing 50 billion emails out to bid a year, you can only imagine how many pricing proposals I see from across a wide variety of vendors. And then I see what the final deal pricing is. Nobody, not even your procurement people, know where pricing in as well as somebody like us knows. Like, we tracked it for 10 years. We know what brands should be paying, and even better, the vendors know we know. So it's when they see it, when they know we've been hired and are working with the brand, they know that the pricing is going to have to be really good, because we know what it should be. And it just makes you feel better as a brand to know you didn't leave any money on the table. You got the best price you could get.
I see many email platforms priced based on the number of records in the database, which practically cost them nothing these years, and not based on the number of emails sent. What do you think about that?
Yeah, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Historically, one of the big differences between B2B platforms and B2C platforms was how they priced. Okay. B2C platforms charged based on CPM. B2B, because volumes were way, way, way lower than B2C, couldn't make money on CPM.
Yeah.
So they charged for records in the database. So fast forward to today, that's still what B2B platforms do. And that's why I advise any B2C platform that's looking at a B2B platform to stop, because it's going to be way too expensive for them. Yeah. But you're right. A lot of the other vendors have added different fees in order to make their CPMs even lower. They're adding other fees to sort of subsidize the reduction. I call it whack-a-mole pricing. You lower this one goes up. You pound this one down, goes up over here. And I've seen a lot of them do that, add like data storage fees, like you were saying, data storage fees, contacts in the database fees in B2C.
Yeah.
I can tell you, vendors, brands hate that, and I hate that, because it is costly and it makes them do things like maybe switching their database. Charge the CPM. Keep pricing simple. But most vendors keep it very complex. And brands over and over, and we have in our process, we created what we call a common pricing template. And we make and we've included everything that we've ever seen vendors put into a contract. And we say, here you go. Put your pricing into this because we want to compare your pricing to the other 3 vendors. And we know we won't be able to do that if we just have you all submit pricing the way you want. And I see it all over the place. And that's where I see the whack-a-mole. Like I'll tell one vendor, these data storage fees are outrageous and arbitrary. Cut them in half. Okay. And the next come back, they've been cut in half. But I look at the top and the CPM's gone up. I'm like, no, this is not, this is not an opportunity for you to charge me more elsewhere. I get it that vendors have a number in their head that they have to get, or that their finance is saying contract's only worth it if it's this much. I get that. But be transparent in your pricing. Don't make me have to dig and don't make me think. I want to be able to look at your pricing and go, oh, I get it. Don't make me think. If you make me think, you're making me angry.
Yeah.
So to the original point, I don't like it. You're right. More vendors are doing it. I think it's a mistake. Particularly to your point, storage is nothing in these days. They're all storing it in the cloud. And so adding additional records doesn't change their infrastructure at all. They copied it from B2C. I think it was a bad idea. And, I'm not a one-man wrecking crew that can make it go away, but I constantly tell vendors I don't like it. So, there's that.
There is a new kid in the block called CDP, Customer Data Platform, and I see some of those integrated inside ESPs. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, if one thinks the ESP landscape is confusing, CDP landscape is chaos. Everybody's calling themselves a CDP. Though the CDP Institute has got 4 distinct categories of CDP, and I think David Rabb, who runs that, has nailed it. So if you want to learn about CDPs in your own time, go check out the CDP Institute website. But today there are CDPs that act like ESPs and ESPs that act like CDPs. So are they just ESCDPs? That's a new acronym. I'm
ESCDPs.
for ESCDP. What on the CDP side, you have what you call deployment, what David Rabb calls deployment CDPs. CDPs initially were meant to activate data and send it out to your ESP, to your mobile, to your this, to your mailhouse. And those CDPs will be around forever. But the higher functioning CDPs, like what David calls the deployment CDPs or the orchestration CDPs, are barely distinguishable from ESPs. And I think that's going to your point, it is going to be the culmination of the dream of CRM. Everything's going to be in one platform. All of the data aggregation, all of the real-time feeds, all of the identity resolution, all of the things that CDPs were meant to solve for, plus the ability to deploy email and multi-channel campaigns. And there are CDPs that meet that definition right now, and they're ESPs that meet that definition right now. And I think, some of the larger ESPs have CDPs sort of adjacent and I call it CDP inside. But some of these newer platforms, it's not side by side. They're fully merged, fully formed. I mean, built that way. It wasn't an ESP with a CDP grafted on. And again, that's a good solution. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But these are platforms that were actually built as they were intended, and they are CDPs and ESPs all in one. And that's going to continue. Longer term, I see the CDP market, again, the base CDPs that data and IT love, the ones that are just for data management and aggregation and deduping and cleansing. They're going to stick around, and maybe we'll continue to call them CDPs. But ESPs and CDPs have already merged at the top, and that's going to continue. It's interesting because CDPs sort of ate the DMP market. There's DMPs around, and CDPs came along and said, "You look like us, so we're just going to absorb you right in." And DMPs were gone, poof, overnight. That's what's going to happen to at least to half the CDP market, poof. And it's going to be ESPs that are the next evolution. ESPs aren't going to become CDPs. CDPs are becoming ESPs.
The majority of modern email platforms utilize cloud-based MTAs, while older platforms maintain their own infrastructure. Each option presenting advantages and disadvantages. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is one of those arcane debates that we like to have in the email marketing industry, as you know. What we're talking about here is MTAs, which stands for Mail Transfer Agent. And as you said, those are the things that literally deploy the email. The historic model of an ESP has been that they bought MTAs from so SparkPost was owned by Message Systems, and Message Systems was a company that sold ESPs the hardware, the MTAs, so that they could attach it to their platforms and send mails. So for years that was the model, and then SendGrid and SparkPost came out as distinct offerings, and IT guys loved them because they were very simple to set up. Transactional emails, triggered emails off of platforms and infrastructure. So IT guys loved them. Marketing people hated them because they were not designed to do promotional campaigns. They were not designed to set them up. So what happened was suddenly all what I call a class of next gen ESPs, to your point, all started using, instead of buying their own MTAs, started using, and David Daniels, he was the first one I heard use this phrase, MTA in the cloud. And he referred to all of these as MTAs in the cloud, which is what they are. And all of the next gen platforms that have emerged in the last 5 years deploy through SendGrid or SparkPost, or, as you said, Mailgun. And even the deployment CDPs we were just talking about, they go through these MTAs in the cloud. And again, which it just is one more reason why, how they just look just like the next gen platforms. I mean, the next gen platforms and the CDPs are what are going to merge. And I should have made that more clear earlier. Next gen CDP merging. Now, which is better? Normally, whoever I spoke to last is what I think. So if I spoke to a legacy ESP who's got their own MTAs, and I say, why is that better? And they say, well, because our deliverability team is able to monitor it on behalf of our clients. We can control what IPs are being sent off of. We can help better manage your reputation. I think,
makes sense.
Right. And then I talk to a next gen platform. Yeah, it does. Exactly. See, that's my problem. But then I talk to a next gen platform, and I say, well, why is yours better? And they say, but sort of as you started, these guys send more emails than anybody in the universe. They've got deliverability, and they were talking about SparkPost, and not just SendGrid, but SparkPost. They've got so much deliverability experience with all that volume of email that, we can focus on other parts of our clients' email performance and not have to think about deliverability. And I think, well, that's a good argument. So I don't know which is better, but I love that you brought that up, because when I said earlier that there are much bigger differences between ESPs than brands recognize, this is one of those. I mean, this is a huge difference, a huge philosophical difference that may or may not have an impact on what type of ESP you want. Maybe it doesn't matter, but that needs to be thought through, because, again, these are not things that are advertised by the vendors. They're not hiding it, but they're not going out and saying, we have our own MTAs, hire us. Or we don't have our own MTAs, hire us. So, but that's one great example of significant differences between various platforms that most people don't know or think about or care about.
I know you touched those points before, but can I ask you to summarize again the bullet points, the highlights of how to choose the right ESP?
Yeah, sure. Number one is make sure you have enough time, and whatever, and that becomes more important the bigger you are as a company, and the bigger the ESP you're looking at. But whatever you think it's going to take, double it, because underestimating the time it takes is disastrous. That's number one. Number two, think long and hard about your requirements, what you want. Why do you want to move? What are your pain points? Why are you moving to begin with if it's not for cost? What's driving you to move?
Yeah.
Define those things in either use cases or in requirements. And the requirements, if you're an enterprise, could be 250 requirements. We easily come up with that many. But understand, again, what's driving you to move. In step three, make sure that you invite vendors that can fix that. That can, whatever your pain points on, or that at least you think can. Not the vendor that your buddy says is the hot vendor of the week, but vendors. So you got to do, everybody likes to take shortcuts. Everybody.
Yeah.
Who should I be in my RFP? Everybody, give me 3 names. Everybody likes to take shortcuts. But to your point, your question was, how do you ensure that you do it to the best degree possible? Follow my 3. Give yourself enough time. Do the hard work of understanding what you don't like about your ESP and what you want to change. And 3, limit those ESPs that in your mind can potentially fix that. And you may have to rely upon a salesperson telling you that. So make sure you give yourself enough time to do it. Do the hard work of understanding what you don't like about your current vendor, what's making you want to look around to begin with, particularly if it's not just pricing. And number 3, look at vendors that you believe can address those issues for you. Don't look at vendors because Sela on the OI Zoom call said, I like this vendor.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's been a pleasure. How people can follow you?
You can also follow me at CS Marriott on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn, and so is Email Connect LLC. So all those places.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Sela.
This podcast is brought to you by Data Media, email deliverability and email marketing consulting services.